All right, let's get started. The Zoom session this week. Welcome everyone. Julie's home, which is good to see. Oh, look at that. I hope everybody's well. Good morning everyone. And look, it's assessment week, so let's not talk for too long. Let's not hold people up. Let's try and be as relevant as we possibly can. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the Q&A forums this week. And the first comments I really want to make is about the ACS. I mean, hopefully as you're getting to know the Australian Curriculum for Science, you're actually starting to, develop a little bit of a romance with it. Let's figure, it is a fabulous document. And it is, the reason why I brought Dennis Goodrum on board so much in some of the videos and the content lectures is because Dennis is the architect of this wonderful piece of curriculum. And it really is a lot more complex than it looks. And it's also a lot more flexible than it looks. And this is why, it's really good at this stage of your careers to experiment with it. But it provides a futures perspective. So it's not just about the knowledge and skills. We know science understandings. We know about inquiry skills. We're drilling those at the moment. We're becoming, competent as teachers in those languages. But it's also about higher order abilities, and this is the human endeavour strand. It's about working and living in a rapidly globalising world. And we're going through periods of what we call discontinuous change. The world will never be the same. We've got unprecedented development and we've got social disruption on a massive scale, refugees, terrorism, environmental change, global warming. This is a document which is trying to set our students up with the skills, understandings and insights to not only know science, but also to be critical of the nature and limitations of science, the cost to the planet and humanity of unintended side effects of science, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, all of these, Texaco oil spills, all of these things that happen as a result of science and its evolution. And there are also overarching dimensions within the ACS. It talks about general capabilities and cross-curriculum priorities. We know what they are. We've got 7 general capabilities. They tie to other curriculum areas, so the ACS can never stand alone. It's also got its cross-curriculum priorities. We know about Indigenous and Torres Strait Island cultures. We're also talking here about Australia and Asia perspectives. And of course, the big one for science, of course, is sustainability and global citizenship. That's what sustainability all is. I mean, on the forums last week, we had some questions about how do I include sustainability in my lesson sequence. Well, again, it's about, it can be as simple as being creative and critical thinkers, personal and social capabilities, ethical understandings, intercultural understandings. All of these compelling contexts for students to understand the worldview of culturally different others, and also to help them build a moral conscience about the impact of their own footprints on the planet. So, when we talk about sustainability, we don't need to bring in the big sustainability with a capital S. We can actually talk about the small s sustainability, how we get kids to build a moral conscience around some of the side effects of science as a human endeavour. So it's, again, I'm just pointing to you at this stage, you're probably over the ACS to some degree. What I do now is challenge you to try and see it a little bit differently. To actually have a look at it as the document and the inquiry document that it really is, that it's setting up students to be participants, active participants, what Aristotle would have called, noble citizenship in a world in which is really going to challenge them. And, and that framework alone, human endeavour, some of us think, oh, I don't like this, I'm not strong on physics, I'm not strong on chemistry, sometimes I don't even know the difference. Well, that's okay. No one's going to die from not knowing the difference between physical and chemical sciences. But human endeavour is always a real engagement hook. So, and we'll talk about a little bit about that as we go through and look at your lesson sequences in this session. Some Q&A posts to note. Hopefully people have been on the Q&A. I'm getting a lot of people emailing me direct and that's good, that's fine. But what I'm doing is actually writing the same response 5 to 6 times. And sometimes it's really good if you would go to the forum and post it there, because I've said many times, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And if you're thinking it, you can guarantee, of the 150 people in this course, that there are 10 other people thinking it. So, do use the forum. A couple this week that we're going to look at and just talk briefly about. Jack posted one, I think it was yesterday or today, where he asked about the year level. Are we required in our lesson sequence to talk about specific year levels? Melissa's actually uncovered 2 misconceptions which was really interesting. She's not the only one. I've had 3 emails along those lines. What do I do? Oh my God, there's more than one misconception. Relax, enjoy it. You know, the students have just thrown you a lifeline. You've now got your initial lesson all sorted, your initial misunderstanding, and then you've got your follow-up one. So it's what we call a negotiated curriculum. You're negotiating without them even knowing it. You know, and this is all part of, you know, take your hat off. This is obviously part of a very effective inquiry process. You've done very well to spill out 2 misconceptions, and now you can be doubly effective with your learners. Word limits and intertextual referencing, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Assessment in the ACS, I'm really enjoying some of the perspectives coming through. It's fabulous that people have actually got on there. Not many of you, it's only 4 or 5, but you know, they are fabulous perspectives coming through. And look, it was activity 4 in this week's learning activities. So, you know, jump in and have a look and see what people are saying about assessment in the ACS. What it involves, and it broadens out in focusing on NAPLAN and, you know, if you like, the tension between standardized testing related to NAPLAN and a curriculum like the ACS, which really, really tries to establish an inquiry-based approach to life and to science. And then that seems to get undermined by NAPLAN, which, you know, sucks about 4 or 5 weeks of the teaching year out of the system. So, and it doesn't do it once, it does it, you know, at multiple year levels. So have a look at that. Some really, at that particular thread, assessment in the ACS. I mean, I started it, but some of the perspectives coming through, you know, people are talking about their own experience of assessment in schools. It's a really good practice. Naomi talked about uploading supporting attachments, and I'll briefly just deal with this one here. Some of you are talking about wanting to attach things to your assignment. Again, in point number 3, I talk about intertextual referencing and appendices. And if you are going to, attach something, in Naomi's case, it was a PowerPoint slideshow, Moodle assessment will not accept 2 uploads. Okay, so what will happen is, you know, one of them will be there and the other won't. So it could be your assignment that's missing. So don't upload. What I'm encouraging you to do, if you do have some stimulus material you want to include, put it on in a Word document, create an appendix and attach it to your assignment. And PowerPoint slides can be done. Just use the notes page, put about 8 of them to a page, or 9. I mean, it likes to print in odd numbers, PowerPoint. And then, you know, submit that as an example of your stimulus material. So attach it as an appendix and upload it with your document. And we also had another student who's having some trouble getting some subjects for her interview process for her surveying. And, you know, it's been really interesting to see the response, seeing so many of you jump online starting to sell children, which is fabulous. I've got 2, you can use them. I've got 3, use this one. Thank you so much. That is real collaboration. You know, so I take my hat off to you. That's really, that is the spirit of study. We're not in competition with each other. You know, we are in fact collaborating with each other. So let's have a look. We'll go to Jack's thread, and anyone got anything they want to add at this particular stage? Or question? And Jack actually raised a really interesting question. Please feel free, just jump in.
I noticed when I looked at the examples that no one has done, well, has explained how they will correct the learning, sorry, can't English today. No one is doing it the same way, like how they'll correct the misconception. Everyone sort of, some people did like lesson plans, some people did full paragraphs, some people, like, it was all very different. Is that all right if we sort of make it our own?
Absolutely, and this is why I've tried to promote as many different models as possible. There's no one answer. You know, and people have different teaching styles. Some people teach in a very narrative way, so your lesson plans and your response to this assignment will be quite wordy. Some people, you know, if we use Myers-Briggs methodology, for instance, you've got a personality type, very sensing and judging, so you're only going to deal with facts. We're going to see a really stripped down version of your lesson sequence, and, you know, but it's still going to contain all your important information. So you do have freedom to do that. And this is the danger for me in putting up examples. I like to do it because it's been requested, so I always respond to requests. But there's a limitation there. You may look at an example and you may not see your own interpretation. If that's the case, relax, okay? Because the example is just an example of one person's take on that particular response. And this is why, for instance, I point you to Science by Doing, and also begun to point you towards primary connections, because you can see that, you know, there are different ways of presenting the same model. Both science by doing and primary connections rely on the 5Es model. So, and yet they both look quite different in their presentations of the, you know, the lesson sequence. All right. Please, any other questions? Just jump in. Jack said, look at misconceptions. Do we target a select year level for correcting a misconception, or just broad age groups, year 3, year 4, year 6? Look, by all means, you know, I would encourage you very much, and the response I've written there is probably down the bottom here, that the Australian curriculum is an assessment continuum. So teachers use the achievement standards at the end of a period of teaching to make on-balance judgments about the quality of learning demonstrated by students. This then, of course, gets fed back to students and parents as reporting. Okay, so my argument there is, yes, it's pretty important to target a specific year level. In part A of the assignment, it doesn't really matter. You can have a multi-age group, but within your multi-age group, you may find, for instance, a misconception. And that misconception, of course, you're going to go back to your very baseline to ensure that misconception is corrected. And not everybody's going to correct their thinking. It's very hard to change people's values. But what we're doing is we're posing alternate models, alternate representations to what the student believes. And hopefully there's something in that for them. Hopefully that, you know, through the cognitive modelling process, they will begin to rethink and challenge their own assumptions. But the chances are there's about 5 to 7% of students who will never change their mind. Now, and there's certain things happening to support that. You know, there could be a condition, there could be an underlying problem, but you know, you're not going to convince everybody. So what we're looking at here is you know, identifying a group of learners, doing your diagnostic surveying, and then picking a point of entry in the curriculum where you go in at a particular year level. Does that make sense? I actually thought it was a very good question from Jax. That's why I actually put it up there. The second one I'd like to talk to is intertextual referencing. Now, who's having a trouble with word length? Anyone having a trouble with word length with the assignment?
Yes.
Amy, good morning. And what's the issue for you? Where are you finding you're blowing out?
Just with, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I've finished it, but just with like the rationale, I've rationaled the whole idea of misconceptions and why you need to clarify them. And yeah, it's like, I just feel like I'm saying too much with the research embedded.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think rationale is important. I think curriculum intent is everything in an assignment like this, because you've actually done 2 really important steps. You've actually selected a group of learners. You've interrogated that group of learners through diagnostic surveys, and that can be, you know, that's a really broad term, a diagnostic survey. It can be a conversation with them. That can be a diagnostic survey. It can be an actually written instrument that you give them. That can be a diagnostic survey. So you've gone through and done, so you're going to have to explain what you've done. So you're going to need to do some rationale. There's no doubt about that. Whether you've done too much rationale, I doubt it somehow. Because if you're passionate about what you're doing, I mean, I think that you're talking about something that's important to your assessment.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really important. The more you can make it explicit to the marker, the more the marker's going to be on board. And this is the whole notion of word limits. There are bits of your assignment which are going to be core, and they're going to obviously be embedded in the assignment. And then there are bits, for instance, which are going to be illustrations. In this little exchange, I call it, you know, academic eye candy. I mean, it's great to say, for instance, this is what I'm doing, but you can actually take your list of equipment and you can put it in your appendix. You can take your, you know, your science safety laws, if rules in the classroom, and you can put that in your appendix. Anything that's not central to the assignment can actually just be, please refer to Appendix 1. Please refer to Appendix 2. So the chances are that if you're stretching your word limit, it then comes to a critical decision about what am I going to include and what will I appendicize. So
that's how I'm going to use my little website. I've got all my key information in the Word document. Then for all the little extra stuff, like how I'm going to display it to parents and things like that, I'm going to put on the website and say, you know, please just refer to here.
That's brilliant, Lauren. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, you know, and yeah, this is the tweet generation. Okay, they work at twitch speed, and you know, for kids, that's quite a logical thing to do.
Yes, I like technology. Technology does not like me. It's very much a love-hate relationship.
Yes, we often find ourselves in those. But yeah, so have a you know, if for any additional information, go there and have a look at this post. I've tried to summarise as best I can. There's just a couple of rules to observe. You know, academic discourse is full of appendices. You know, they trail behind it like a dog's tail. So, you know, but the appendices should not contain new knowledge. So your new knowledge, your knowledge or your knowledge response, your knowledge base should be in the body of your paper. Your core ideas should be there. The appendix will be an elaboration. There'll be an example. There'll be a follow-up lesson, or there'll be a statement of what the students had done before they walked into the room. The appendices do not generally add to your grade. Okay, what they are is they're elaborations. You know, they're the full Monty. Whereas, for instance, you know, the original assignment really should be self-explanatory. I mean, you could lose the appendices and still have a good assignment. So just think the balance there. You know. The marker, and you know, I know our markers, they will actually use and view your appendices. But you know, they may go through it quite quickly. So they may, for instance, just test some of your core concepts. The marker may be looking for how you're going to make this lesson work at this particular level. And so they're the appendices they'll go through with a really fine-tooth comb, and others they'll just do what we call a global assessment of. So, you know, just think closely about some of those issues. As I say in that last point 6, appendices are so cool because they're an invitation to treat. And, you know, you're basically courting the reader. You're sort of saying, you know, I know you want more. So if you want more, go and have a look at this. You know, I've provided it for you. So it's a really nice discourse to get into, and it will hopefully alleviate some of the tension you're feeling around those word limits. And, you know, because I'm getting some sense of quite stress coming from some people about the fact that the word limits are in fact causing them some grief. Any other questions people would like to talk about, or any points you'd like to make about either word limits or anything else that's on the page there, uploading attachments, trading children online? Any points people would like to make? I'm surprised how quiet the forum has been surprised how quiet the forum has been in terms of assessment task 1. It seems that people are busy doing it. And you know, seem to understand pretty much what's required. So that'll be good.
It's pretty clearly set out, like on the Moodle page, like it's pretty, not rudimentary, but like it's very stepped out. So it is easy to understand, okay, so I need this, 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 and this. And plus having the examples is really helpful as well.
Yeah, great. And that's good, Lauren. I mean, that's our purpose, not to cause you grief, but to give you an opportunity to actually develop something that's useful for you to take forward. And you know, and I do think those students too are writing in saying, you know, being critical, saying, you know, you're a mongrel dog. What a terrible assignment to set, because I haven't got access to kids and this and, you know, a couple of other claims. But, you know, I'm hoping in a couple of years' time when you're sitting down, you know, this Monday morning, you don't know what you're going to teach for science. You think, oh yeah, I remember this unit that I've developed, and you can pluck it out, dust it off, and with a few simple cognitive twists, you can actually get it going. It's something you've got constant access to, and it's also a model for how to teach other science. So, you know, it's important to have at least one of those under your belt. The weekly activities this week were quite clear. Anybody got any problems or questions they'd like to raise about the weekly activities? I'm trying to keep them as short as possible because I really want you to focus on your assessment. And I try where possible to link to tasks that are going to help you with the assessment without overburdening you with weekly activities. Probably the key point I want to make here, assessment has changed. I mean, I remember when I went to school, the teacher would walk around the room and ask you to open your book for a 4-week unit, and he would pull up beside you, look over your shoulder, flick through 20 pages of detailed sweat and work, and then say 7.5. And you had to write the 7.5 in your book, and then he'd go out the front later and call everybody's marks. Of course, there's shame, you know, some people are getting 2s and 3s. I remember Simon Andrews, one kid, we used to call him Grub, that was his nickname. I mean, Simon never got above a 2. And so, you know, this was a humiliation, this process of assessment. You know, we all wrote down our 8s and our 9s, and Simon wrote down his 1s and his 2s. And of course then had to call them out and declare himself to be an utter dunce. Of quite a humiliating process. So we've come a long way with assessment. And we no longer look just at what students have learned and give it a mark, a very subjective mark at that. It's got to be actually fed into the system, into our planning and into our student work. And that's probably the most important point to take from the weekly activities. The core key terms, I mean, obviously it'd be very hard to do assessment task 1 if you hadn't considered these key terms. Assessment, 3 different types: for learning, of learning, and as learning. So we can build some of these into our lesson plans, and I'm looking forward to how you use them, because there's different types of assessment that you can use: for learning, feedback, of learning, okay, where you can actually comment on the actual learning that's taking place, and as learning. So for instance, what we call double loop learning, Chris Agiris wrote about this in the 90s and 2000s, converted into triple loop learning, where we sit down, we do something once, we then reflect about it. That's the second loop. And the third loop is we sit down and we talk about someone else, talk about it with someone else. That's the triple loop. So why do we assess? Okay, 2 reasons: to form judgments and allocate grades ultimately. We're compelled to do it. It's not because we're compulsive assessors as teachers. It's actually required. It's written into your job description. And of course, but we can do more than just assess. We can do more than just do what our job asks us to do. We can actually be effective. We can diagnose, we can do feedback, summative activities, we can grade students and give them the feedback they need. We can identify areas, brickbats and bouquets. We can throw them some brickbats and say, well, look, this is what you've got to work on. And bouquets, this is what you're doing really, really well. And if we set our assessment at the right level, it will always motivate students. It will always motivate students. And it's really interesting. You can teach a unit on design, or architecture, or heating and cooling, and then take the kids out to the school sandpit, have all sorts of tools there, and give them 40 minutes to build a structure that is going to be cool in the heat and hot or warm in the cold. And watch them in groups, watch them as they tease through and do that. You can then assess it. You can get them to photograph it, and they can put their photograph or do a little video, and they can actually report. You can post that to a wiki, and you've got a wonderful little example of your students at work. And then you can bring in an expert. An expert can actually assess and talk to the kids about their solutions and resolutions. And of course, now you've got a full-blown, a connected lesson. So, these are the sorts of things that we can do quite easily as teachers. So assessment doesn't have to be of a written nature. Okay, we can be very reflective in what we do. The points we made this week, Dennis Goodrum, assessment does drive learning. That's why we do it. And of course, observation and measuring, that's part of science. Okay, and it feeds our understanding of the world. So therefore, it's obviously going to be very, very similar for our learners. Science education, we'll talk about the 3 different stages here: diagnostic, formative, and summative, beginning, middle, and end. So assessment is a continuum. This is the whole point. Assessment is a continuum. So in assessment task number 1, we'll be looking for how you are. Your diagnostic is quite explicit. That's where this task started. Identify a misconception. The formative assessment, as you're going through, you may use a range of tools. You may get students to draw things. Okay, at the end of each lesson, they add to their concept map, or they add to their sketch. Okay, or they may change their sketch completely. And finally, summative. What are you going to do to test their understanding throughout the unit? And in this week's content lecture, I pointed to a whole range of different strategies. You can do summative assessment. You can take students in their notebooks and sit down and talk to them about what they've done in the unit. That's what we call a portfolio or an interview style assessment. And it's a very, very good summative tool. Diagnostic assessment we went through and talked about. And we talked about the notion of socio-constructive, socio-cultural constructivism, which is Mitch Resnick is one of the practitioners of socio-cultural constructivism, and it's really, it's a broad-reaching constructivist model. And if we talk about learning being constructed from understanding, then it really begins with where the learners are at in the student's picture, and we move from there. And you can see, the influence of Vygotsky here, the zone of proximal development, the most capable other, and the aim, of course, as a teacher is to become redundant to the learner. If we're really successful, our kids won't need us. Please jump in if you've got any questions. Formative assessment we talked about, some really good strategies here. Thumbs up, thumbs down is a really good one when you're talking to students, okay, and you've just gone through and completed a task or spoken about something. You can then ask another student to explain it, and then thumbs up, those who get it, those thumbs down don't, okay, and then you can redirect to another student if you like, or you can actually pick up the mantle yourself depending on your teaching style. And what we can actually do then is strip away misunderstandings and work towards a formative assessment. So you're gathering all the chickens together before you move them into the next pen. And this is the whole aim of formative assessment, checking with students. Traffic lights, okay, red, yellow and green cards, hold up your green if you're going well, okay, who's stuck, hold up your red card, okay, and then you can have a look and see the numbers of cards in the room. Formative assessment doesn't have to be complex. It can be really quite simple and it can be hit and miss. Is anyone using any other techniques? Or planning to use other techniques?
I'm using collaborative discussion.
Okay, tell us about that, Laura.
So what basically, I'm going to get my students to do rotational experiments, record some observations, what they see, and then after that we will have a big group discussion and mind map our observations and what we have learnt by doing these experiments. And then the teacher can use that to see, okay, so who's observing things, who might not quite get this concept, who might need a little bit of help.
Yep, love it. That's brilliant. It's well done, well conceived. Anybody else trying anything?
Colin, I'm actually going to try and use my physics concept towards a greater sort of STEM challenge, building a hovercraft.
Ah, great. Yeah, tell us how you're doing that.
I found some good resources with the NASA education site, and it's really fascinating where they're actually building little mini hovercrafts, and they can move on any surface, like or water or a table or something like that. It's all about forces of motion. Yep,
fantastic. Yeah, well done. I mean, there's so many simple activities you can do. One of my favourites with forces in motion is Bungee Barbie, where you get students to make a little bungee platform, and then they bring a Barbie doll and they've got to work out how many elastics are going to get Barbie safely to the floor just so as her hair touches the floor and we don't bash her head. So you can actually do lots of really simple little experiments like that, that just extend students. And in this area of STEM that you mentioned, Julie, I'm really glad it's coming up. It's coming up a little bit in people's discussion. So it's the integration of science, technology, engineering and maths. And there's also the STEAM version, science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths. And there's a lot of debate out there at the moment about which is the model for the future. Interestingly, Dennis Goodrum doesn't believe in STEM. He thinks it's a fad. He thinks science inquiry is the way to go. But perhaps Dennis is a little bit of a dinosaur there. I think we're going to see STEM become something of the future. We've got schools all around the country building $4 and $5 million STEM centres, even though it's officially not part of the Australian curriculum. So they're, at the moment trying to write it into the AC using design and technology strands mingled with science and mathematics. So it's going to be interesting to watch that space. But STEM is really just a real world, an authentic application of science, technology, engineering, mathematics concepts. And for instance, we've been involved with robots for, since 2004, running robots competitions, and they're really essentially a STEM and I actually think a STEAM activity. But more about that later. We've got a week where we look at STEM later in the course. Summative assessment, quite straightforward. Quality is one of the key principles, and the other is variety. So, the last thing we need is at the end of every science unit a multiple choice test. Just watch their faces. Okay, just watch the faces. Science dies in their eyes when you pull out multiple choice tests. We'll look at some examples. Things you can do differently. Interviews. A portfolio, concept maps. We heard, I think it was Lauren talking there about their concept maps. Brilliant idea. And that can be used diagnostically, formative and summatively. You can get them to start off with one. You can look at the changes and ultimately you can get them to submit their final concept map with a brief report explaining how they got to where they got.
I've also noticed it engages a lot of visual learners as well.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, because although they may struggle with recording written observations, they can map it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, great. Has anyone read the book Quiet? Q-U-I-E-T. It's a book written by a woman who declares herself to be an introvert. Now, an introvert in the Myers-Briggs sense is someone who draws their energy from their internal taps, their internal sources, whereas extroverts get their energy, from outside themselves. The argument is that education is really geared for extroverts, that we often create tasks, assessment tasks, and learning frameworks which favour the extroverts in the world, kids who are not frightened to throw their stuff out there. Sometimes you just think aloud. Whereas the introvert's the person who likes to take things away, who likes to have a think about it before they'll commit to an actual decision or to an actual process of action. So somewhere in there, we've got to think about our assessment purpose too, and the learners that we're sharing with. Notebooking, for instance, is wonderful for introverts. Portfolio followed by an interview is great for introverts. A presentation, however, or a student report might be great for extroverts. Obviously there's certain things we have to teach the kids. I mean, communication is one of the core requirements, particularly in the new STEM and STEAM educations. Communication is what we call one of the soft skills. And kids need to be able to do it. They need to be able to do it. But do they have to do it all the time? And this is what we talk about, the balance of our assessment. Bear in mind that we do have at least introverts and extroverts. We have some strong introverts and some strong extroverts. We have some people in the middle. We have some people on the border. Okay, we are going to need to take that on board when we start to structure our assessment processes and structures, because it's really about developing the whole individual. Peer review is fabulous. I think you heard Lauren talking about some peer review strategies there, which was really, really good, particularly with the use of her wiki or her website. There was
Colin, sorry, you just said before about not using multiple choice questions. I have used 4 in my diagnostic test,
Right.
along with yes/no cards and some open-ended questions. Is that okay in the diagnostic?
My word, that's brilliant in the diagnostic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd check when you
the
said
same, so
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the summative assessment.
the end. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. I didn't use it in my end. I got them to do something else, but that's good.
Yeah, and look, it's not a sin to use it. Just, don't overuse it. It's about
Yeah.
quality and variety, the two goals. And, you can have really good quality multiple choice items, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But time in, time out, they wear a bit thin.
Oh, as summative assessment too, it's not really exciting for them, is it?
No, it's not, is it? I mean, I agree with you, but sometimes necessary, depending on your time frame. You may be running out of time in term, you've got a whole lot of conflicting commitments, and all of a sudden you've got to bring a unit to a close, and so you can't do your 3-week let's build a mini world activity. You've then got to come up with something quick and something speedy that's going to deliver the same sorts of valid judgments that you need to make about your learners.
Well, I just put that they had to make a poplet, so they're using iPads to make a poplet type of information report. So
Love it. That's brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, clearly, don't throw away the multiple choice test. Diagnostically, it's brilliant. And, in your use of cards to support that is brilliant. Just throwing students a group of cards and saying which ones are living, which ones are not. Okay, and then get them to compare their cards and then do it again together and then do it again as a group of 4. And eventually we'll get a really, really good diagnostic assessment. It's like a living, a psychodynamic multiple choice test, or have continuums going across the room. People who believe this at one end, people who believe the other, and then talk to the people on the continuum. You're in the middle. Why are you there? Okay, and this way you're doing diagnostic assessment. It doesn't have to be about multiple choices, but multiple choice will do that purpose and do it well, particularly if you're going to couple it with others. The links to assessment, the final thing I'll talk about this week, and clearly you're up to your neck in assessment at the moment. I really appreciate that so many of you can find your way online. It's terrific that you actually are prioritising that, because it is important, I think, to stay in touch with the course. Next week you've got off, so I imagine there's no such thing as having time off during semester. You're probably switching over to another assessment for another subject.
I'm going to try and get 1.5 done next week with the week off.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, similarly. And I think I'm running some robotics workshops, and I've got a university, our school has got a meeting down in Brisbane where everyone's getting together for 2 days. So it's going to be a pretty full week anyway. So this is what everyone does in their downtime. The little assessment checklist. And again, this comes from the Science by Doing folk. And the reason I put it in there is because they're using the 5 E's model. And it is pure inquiry. And so these are the sorts of things, really, you can have a look, you see a lot of commonality between this and our assessment rubric for assessment task 1. Now, have you included tasks that uncover the misconception? Are they explicit? Have you actually said, I'm completing this task, or students will complete this task to uncover the misconception? Have you written that? Or are you leaving it up to me to say, oh, I think that's what you're doing? Okay, be explicit. Bear in mind, the whole aim is if you can write this so that another teacher can pick it up and use it, then you know it's been a successful item. Incorporate a number of assessment strategies. Okay, for diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment, are they obvious? Is there quality and variety? And that's our next point. Include opportunities to assess both understanding of concepts and of process skills. So are you, for instance, doing your diagnostic assessment where you're understanding, mapping out concepts, and then giving them the opportunity to develop some science process skills like fair tests, investigations, presentations, okay, group work and communication. These are all process skills. Make assessment criteria explicit. So, have you supplied a rubric, or have you put together a rubric which is going to map out the skills that your students are meant to actually demonstrate in working through this particular lesson sequence? Now, you may get out of that by sort of saying, oh, this is, a small lesson sequence in a larger unit, and the larger unit, does this. Great. As long as you're aware, we're looking for awareness of how to make your assessment explicit. Have you gone beyond isolated facts? And are you targeting higher order thinking? And of course, you can't not do that if you're following the inquiry method. Have you incorporated opportunities for frequent feedback? Have you ensured the evidence of student learning will serve as a guide for the next appropriate step in learning? So are you doing evidence-based teaching? And do you provide students with opportunities to demonstrate? Actually, when I put the video up for the content this week, the young teacher, Matt, I thought he was just brilliant. When he said to the students, I don't want to teach you the same thing you already know and have you falling to sleep, every week or every lesson. He's really good common sense engagement, throwing responsibility for learning back where it belongs. Okay, they're co-learning. So I'm going to get from you, he said, what I need so that I can effectively plan your lessons. Really, really good strategies. Provide students with opportunities to demonstrate mastery of concepts and process skills. So in other words, your 4th and 5th E's, are you going to extension and evaluation there? And consider opportunities for student self-assessment and or peer assessment. Are you building some collaboration and some of those really important soft skills? And again, have you actually run it by anybody? Or do we just develop our units in our own little silo? It's important, I think, to try and be as explicit and inclusive in your development of teaching as you possibly can. And I know once you hit the floor as an in the classroom teacher, you'll be sharing all the time, and you'll be begging, borrowing, stealing as well. So, but sometimes you get things from people, it's really good quality things, and they become your go-to person. And I do think always be the go-to person that you want to go to. So if you can, develop those same approaches and same skills yourself. I'm going to stop talking there. Is there anything anybody would like to raise?
Is there a way we can get a copy of that checklist, to have?
Sure. What I'll do is once I get off here, I will make a copy of it and I'll put it on the forum.
Sweet, thank you.
No problems. I'll just write that down so that I don't forget.
If you use your snipping tool on the computer, you can snip the screen and paste it into a Word document.
Yes, you can do that, definitely. Providing you know where to find it. Do people know where to find it?
Just put it in your search bar. Just type in snip in the search bar and it'll come up with the snipping tool. Click on that and then you can click new and use your mouse to select the whole screen that we've got showing here and then paste it into a blank Word document.
Absolutely. The other option, if you've got your screen up at the moment, and I'll leave it sitting there for a while, is you can just hit your print screen function, open a Word document and paste it there, and you'll have it. And if you've got Paint or some really simple proprietary software, you can actually cut the picture and resize it yourself and then paste it too. So thanks, Wendy. Great tips. But what I'll do is I will make a copy and make it a little bit easier for you, which would be good too, so that's easy to do. For anyone who wants it, it is in the assessment unit in the Science by Doing. If you go into professional units, you will see a unit there on assessment, and there is a downloadable PDF book which carries most of the resources here that I'm promoting, and you will have access to this checklist as well as some of the information written by Dennis Goodman and his team about how to use it and about assessment in general. So they're great resources, and that's why I'm pushing them to you and pushing you towards them, because they are going to be there for at least the next couple of years, so you can safely build your teaching practice around these resources. Look, thank you all. If there are no more questions, I'll get busy putting together the checklist and getting it onto the forum for you. Good luck with the assessment this week. I'm sure it'll go well. From what I'm hearing and seeing, and the level of discussion is really quite exciting. So it's such a difference, you know, marking informed work and you know, getting excited about the product that I'm reading. And I do, you know, thank you for that. It's certainly a lot more fun than the option. So thank you.
That means we all get HDs, right?
I don't know what that would do to my bell curve, Lauren.
Oh.
No, definitely. HDs will be offered and given where the criteria is met, definitely. All right, thank you everyone. Have a good week and good luck with the assignment. If you run into any problems, please email me. I'm not an ogre, and I do live in the real world as well, so please, if you do have any problems, don't stress, make contact. Thank you.
Thanks.